Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, and I'm here with attorney Rachel Alters, and we're going to discuss one of Rachel's recently resolved cases against Lincoln Financial. And this was a long-term disability insurance claim in which you were able to get benefits overturned. And so in this video, what I'd like to do is discuss the background of the case, the challenges you had to overcome, how you were able to do it, because we want people to understand and be able to relate to a similar situation they may be having with Lincoln or someone else who has the same medical condition and can pick up some tips and information about how to move forward with their appeal, and also if they need help to learn how we can help them. So to get into it, what was the background of your particular case?
I represented a gentleman who was a lead architect at a firm, and he was diagnosed with Lyme disease years back and had chronic Lyme, and in turn also had developed chronic fatigue syndrome. He had severe anxiety and depression as a result of the chronic fatigue syndrome and the chronic Lyme, and he was just couldn't focus. He had, cognitive issues that prevented him from being able to work as an architect because that, you have to focus and have a lot of concentration. So he filed for the claim, and they wouldn't pay his claim. They said that they didn't see enough evidence in the file to prove his claim, and they denied him, and he came to me to help him appeal.
So Lincoln never paid him, correct?
Never paid him.
Okay. And what was the basis for their denial, and what did they rely upon to deny his disability benefit claim?
In the denial letter, they just kept repeating that there was not enough objective medical evidence, there wasn't enough medical proof to show that he had the chronic fatigue, that he had Lyme disease, and that this was affecting his ability to work. They claimed that the restrictions and limitations that his doctor provided were not, nothing was justifying them, and that their peer review doctors reviewed all the records. They did a paper review, and that they disagreed with all of my client's doctors, and he had multiple. He had, maybe 6 or 7 different physicians treating him, all on the same page, stating that he was too sick to work in his job, and their doctors just reviewed records, said, we don't think so. We think he's fine to be an elite architect. We don't think that he even has chronic fatigue, and that there's not enough evidence in the medical records to prove this. So we had to prove them wrong.
How can they rule out chronic fatigue or Lyme disease without ever examining him?
Well, they really can't, because first of all, that chronic fatigue is a subjective disease. So there isn't a blood test or an x-ray or any kind of objective test that you can undergo that will prove you have it. So you have to be examined in person in order to see what the subjective symptoms are. So you go by what the subjective complaints are, the physical examinations. If you're in, also with Lyme disease, there are tests that can show you have Lyme, but basically the symptoms are going to present. You're going to have fatigue, you're going to have cognitive issues, you're going to be confused oftentimes, and these things are most often seen when you're in front of a doctor, not just doing a paper review.
The one thing that's a saving grace for claimants is that when you have these conditions like chronic fatigue, where they are subjective in nature, like you said, it makes it almost always unreasonable for a disability insurance company to not examine the claimant because of the fact that there's no generally accepted medical objective test that will show that the person has chronic fatigue syndrome. So how could the disability insurance company and Lincoln here say we reasonably reviewed the file based upon records that clearly support the person's diagnosis of chronic fatigue?
Right, that's what they do. It's their general denial, and you see it in almost every denial letter. They'll just say there's not enough objective evidence, when in turn, when you look at the medical data and the research, there isn't a way to provide objective evidence for these things. So chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, those types of illnesses, those are all based on subjective complaints.
And as bad as it is that Lincoln did this is not specific behavior to them. This is done by a lot of disability insurance companies for people with Lyme and chronic fatigue. So you've become kind of a well-known attorney who specializes and knows these chronic fatigue and Lyme disease diagnoses. So this was very routine for you to deal with, but what was your strategy here, and how were you able to overcome the denial and prove that your client was disabled?
Well, we worked hand in hand with our clients' physicians, and it was really important to get them on the same page. And we would take them the denial letter, they reviewed it, and they refuted the denial letter and all of the doctors' opinions on that work for the insurance carrier. So what they did was we would send them an attending physician statement that was very specified. We created something, just for the client and his specific symptoms, and the doctor would fill all of those out and then provided many additional medical records that were supportive, that documented the pain that our client was in. We had him keep a pain journal, a fatigue journal that would keep track of how often he needed to nap. All of those things are really important because as they are subjective, there's no test to prove he has it, but on a day-to-day basis, the claimant can go about and keep a journal, and that's something that we submit to be, that supports this person's inability to work. If you're napping 4 to 5 hours throughout a day, there's no way you can sit at a desk and be able to function, at a high capacity 8 hours a day. Just, there's no way.
So you worked very closely with the doctors and you custom drafted an attending physician statement, a form for the doctor, because does Lincoln provide a form that's specific to chronic fatigue or Lyme for the doctor?
No, and their forms are very, I find their forms to be very difficult for doctors to fill out because they're biased and they only have boxes to check off with maybe one line to add any kind of comments. They do that on purpose because they want to kind of, put these doctors' opinions in a box and make them have to answer things a certain way to get the client's claims denied. So we create our own forms so that the doctors do have the ability to explain things, to provide, additional information, and then to gear the actual physician statement towards the specific, diagnosis and specific issue that the client has.
And so do you know what review was done once by Lincoln once you submitted all of your information?
As far as what type of review they...
Yeah, what did they do? Did they then want to examine the claimant?
They
What
did
happened?
not. They did not. We submitted an appeal, with several pages of additional medical records and other, I want to say testing, but it wasn't specifically testing for chronic fatigue. It was just, they basically submitted more records describing his physical issues, his, the pain he's having, the fatigue he was having, and then the doctors, would write letters basically stating that there's no way that this claimant could do the material substantial duties of his occupation. They had their doctors review it again. They just did another paper review. They did not have him examined, which they could have. They have the opportunity. The policy allows it. They still chose not to do it, but they did approve his claim. They overturned the decision, and now he's on claim and getting paid. We do have to provide additional records to them every so often and fill out forms, but he's still treating with the doctors on a regular basis. His condition hasn't changed, and they're still supporting the fact, that he's unable to work.
So I want people to understand that, by you assisting with the appeal, why is it so important to put in a super strong appeal as opposed to someone trying to do this on their own, losing the appeal, and then calling you to try to litigate? What kind of advantage is there in having you assist them now as opposed to, obviously they need a lawyer if they were to lose the appeal?
Right. Well, in most situations with most insurance carriers, you only get one shot at an appeal. So the appeal essentially is your entire trial, because once that appeal decision is made, you can't add anything. So when you get to court and the judge is looking at the administrative record, all he's going to be able to review is what you put in the appeal. So if you don't know, because the layperson doesn't know what to put in an appeal, as you and I would know everything that needs to go in there, and not just to win the appeal, but to win in trial. So it's very important, because if you just, send in a letter with a couple medical records as your appeal, they make a determination, then you call me, yes, I can still help you.
Right.
But my chances of winning are much greater during the appeal process and in trial if you hire me to do the appeal.
And a lot of people don't understand, because this is the only area of law where you say, what do you mean I'm going to trial but I can't bring in any other evidence?
Nothing.
It's only what happened in the past, and that's unusual because everyone thinks, oh, I file a lawsuit, I'll get my day in court, I'll present my story and anything else I want to the judge. It doesn't work like that. If you lose the appeal, you're only going to present what was in the appeal from the final day the disability insurance company denied the claim and everything going back. And God forbid something happens the day after their decision that's horrible to you, that's not coming into evidence.
No.
So it's only what's there, and that's what makes this so important. And also in the strategy of how you write your appeal, because the standard is whether or not they act reasonable in the review. And you can't write your appeal and say, here's why you didn't act reasonable, because if they do everything you tell them, then you don't have a good argument to make later. So there's a lot of strategy and thought process that goes into this. And we have other videos that I encourage people to watch where we talk about how to write a disability appeal and the strategies behind writing an appeal letter. So the first step, though, is for somebody who's been denied disability benefits by Lincoln is to reach out to you or myself, send us a copy of their denial letter, a copy of their policy. I know that we'll immediately review it, set a 15, 30-minute phone call, however long it takes to review the claim with them, let them know what their options are, and immediately we'll let them know if we can help them. So congratulations on helping that claimant. I know you've handled hundreds of claims against Lincoln, and that you look forward to speaking to anyone else who needs your assistance. So. Hi, I'm Gregory Dell, the managing attorney of Dell Disability Lawyers, and I hope you find the video you just watched helpful. We put these videos out all of the time, and we'd love if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Beyond our videos on our YouTube channel, we also have lots of information available on our website at diattorney.com, and we encourage you to come to our website. The goal is that we want you to be educated about the disability insurance process. And when you get to our website, you'll see that we have information all about your specific disability insurance company, your occupation, and your medical condition. And we've designed our website such that you can easily search our website to find things that you may specifically be looking for. Now, at our website, we have thousands and thousands of pages of information, hundreds of videos that you can search. Plus, we're building a section of reviews of all the disability insurance companies, and we have the Ask Our Lawyer section where you can go ahead and ask us any questions that you may have. Now, we realize that you may not need us right now, but you may need us in the future to help you with your disability claim, and we think one of the best ways to keep in touch is by clicking the button below and subscribing to our channel. And most importantly, again, no matter where you live in the country, we're always available. Just go ahead and give us a call. We're happy to discuss your claim and let you know immediately if we can help you.